city and it's free restrooms, like every 2 corners. Or you just like holding the cup because it's got the belly band on it, and it just feeling of that paper cup in your hand while you're walking, and it's keeping your hand warm. That's why you go to Starbucks. So the brand is the experience. It's not, I mean, yes, it is visual, right?
Sure.
I mean, when I go to Whole Foods and I walk down the aisles and I will buy packaging, I will buy a product just because of the packaging.
That's how I pick my wine.
Yeah. Oh, I do that at Costco. Just did that yesterday.
Wanna cause no problems. I just wanna live my life, but I keep on hearing about nonsense. Me and my dons ain't mobsters, but you know when you see imposters, we know how to read them faces, same way you know how to read them comments. If you wanna talk, let's talk, but around here, make sure you walk and your talk is constant.
Well, hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Death to Vanilla podcast. My name is Stephen Burkhart with Burkhart Creative Agency, and this show is all about doing something different so that your business stands out and gets noticed. Because let's be honest, there's a ton of noise out there. We got the great resignation going on, so tons of people starting companies, wanting to start out, wanting to get noticed so that they can actually replace the revenue that they just walked away from their job. And so I have different guests on the show that are talking about some of the techniques that they use to succeed and get noticed and help brands grow. And so we're in the midst of the Creator Series. And so I have Lauren on the show with Hello Happiness. Yeah. And she is a graphic designer and has been doing some really cool work with some actually pretty big names. Mm-hmm. She's local here to Phoenix, Arizona. Well, almost Phoenix metropolitan area. Mm-hmm. And so super happy to have you on the show. So thanks for being on.
Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here. This is actually my first video podcast.
Ooh.
So I'm a newbie.
Right.
Thanks for popping the video podcast cherry for me.
Absolutely.
I own Hello Happiness Design, which started in 2015. But it actually became my full-time job back in April. So when you talk about the Great Resignation, I am part of that.
That's awesome.
I was at a job for 5 years. Should I say the job or...
If you want to, if you feel comfortable.
I was the creative director at a very big entertainment destination here in Phoenix called Arizona Boardwalk. They have an aquarium, the Odyssey Aquarium and the Butterfly Wonderland. And while I was there, I did all kinds of stuff like exhibit design and basically everything under the sun. You need a graphic designer or a creative director or an art director or a copywriter or a video person. I'm your girl. I wear a lot of hats. And so I was there for 5 years. And a few years ago, I decided to go back to school and get a master's in business of art and design because in art school, they don't teach you business. And
really?
I know, right? So, I always felt like, they talk about that imposter syndrome. Mm. And I always felt like I kind of had that imposter syndrome. I sometimes I like to talk a big game, but in the background, I have no idea what I'm talking about. So I felt like if I had the degree, the graduate degree in business, I have, some backing to what I'm saying now. And I understand a lot. I actually had to take an accounting class. So, art students and math, they don't really go. They don't.
Boo.
Yeah. But I got through it. It was only one semester. So I did that. I finished in December 2020. And while I was doing that, I was approached by a very big company to do some work for them. And the company is Hidden Valley Ranch. Mm. I know, right? So
name drop.
Little me
That's
got
amazing.
to work on a very big company project, and it was for the release of a new product that's in Walmart. And I did some packaging for them, which was really cool. It's not actually sold on shelves, but it was for their salespeople to get the product sold on their shelves.
Right.
And so that really, started my my thinking of, I think I'm going to build my runway and leave.
Yeah.
I'm going to leave my full-time job, and I'm going to do my own thing because I have been designing for almost 2 decades, and I have been designing for other people's dreams, and it's time to start my own dream.
Yeah.
And so I worked on Hidden Valley stuff. I worked on a few other things along the way, and in April, I left my job of 5 years, and I've done my own thing, and I have to say, I've been extremely successful since I left, and it's been fantastic.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Which is crazy because if I'm not mistaken, when you and I first got connected just by like literally random outreach, you were still at the boardwalk, right?
I was.
Yeah. So this is like a really cool transition that, man, that was a long time ago that we connected then. So, so cool that we're finally here talking about you, just having your own business.
Surreal,
like,
right?
Yeah. Cause like, you were like, oh man, I don't know. I'd really love to do this. And then here you are doing it and finding like a really good place for it. So that's really neat. So congratulations on making that jump. That's huge. Super fun. So out of curiosity, when just kind of rewind when you're talking about some of your creative direction and art and all that other stuff, how do you see all those things combining? Because like for me, I feel like being a creative director and an art director and a graphic designer are all kind of like artistic, but not necessarily like super interconnected skill sets. So like, how do you think about that? How did those help each other out? How did you end up developing those skill sets?
Yeah, so, you know, each position is a different skill set because, you know, if you were to look at an agency, there's a person who's a creative director, there's a person who's an art director, there's a person who's a copywriter, and so on and so forth.
Right.
I was working in-house, and I was working in a small department. I had a designer, a graphic designer, and myself. And while there's also a person who's in charge of PR, and, you know, we have the marketing people, and we all work collaboratively. As the creative director, it was my job to oversee the other graphic designer, and also just, you know, how the whole the design of the presentation of the entire destination plays, right? What is the experience when our guests come to our property? What is it like when they drive through into the parking lot at Odyssey Boardwalk? What is that experience like?
Yeah.
And so I look at being a creative director as like the overall experience, right? The art director is more like the person that's overseeing the graphic designer and what they're completing and giving direction and mentoring and offering feedback where needed. Obviously, we probably all know what a graphic designer does. They are in the weeds for the most part. They're designing, and I was a lot in the weeds for a lot of it. And that is basically like one person wearing many hats, right? I was in a lot of different types of meetings. I was in meetings where I was sitting with all the C-level, you know, the C-suite people, and we were, you know, talking about building a candy store before it was even, you know, a thing. It was just like, let's build a candy store.
Right.
And we went to San Francisco, and we went to the Color Factory, which was like an experiential museum, and we went to like different candy stores in San Francisco and saw how they set up their thing, and that's the role of a creative director, right? It's looking at how other people have set up their experiences, and then bringing all of that research back, and then seeing how you can take that and put that into play. And then, you know, if I took that hat off, and, you know, now I'm putting on my art director hat, and, you know, I'm meeting with, you know, the interior designer from the architecture firm, and we're looking at, you know, what all the different types of flooring and the different paneling for the ceiling. And it's like, well, you know, which one do we like better?
Yeah.
You know? That's, you know, how it is.
What's the emotional experience of this tile?
Exactly. Like, do you like this texture, or do you like this one, or do you like, and then the graphic designer, it's like the graphics, you know, what's going on the walls, or how is that column going to be designed, or whatnot. So,
yeah. No, that totally makes sense. It's so funny. Like,
it's like split personality.
Yeah, totally. No, I think that makes so much sense. And we'll go ahead and dive into experience here, since that's something we talked about before and something super important. But it's so funny that you bring up all of those choices. And I made a joke about the tile, but like the other day I went and I went to Guess and Ralph Lauren and one other store. I think it was Banana Republic, just like literally just browsing. And so it was really interesting because I walked away from that experience, and it's just like, they were all places I've been to before, but for some reason this time I noticed, I was like, man, like, you know, I walk into Ralph Lauren and like all their displays are made out of wood, and they have a certain music playing and a certain smell, a certain flooring, a certain way that they have their store set up. And Guess is like totally different, and they got like rap music playing, like the floor is concrete like it is in here. And like, it's just so interesting that like a brand is such an expression, a certain kind of expression, and you get a certain kind of feeling when you interact with certain kinds of brands. And so the experience is so important. And so that leads us to your experience, right? And so first of all, I want to point out that we got our cool branded outfits on. So show everyone Hello Happiness Designs.
Yes.
So exciting. So she had to wear hers, so I had to rep some of my swag as well.
I know. You never really got the question of like, what do I wear on your podcast? Right. And so I was like, do I wear a branded shirt? Is that like super cheesy? Is this like, shameless, advertising? Or...
Always do shameless advertising.
So, there you go. I always feel weird like wearing it out of my house for some reason.
Oh, really?
I don't know. It's just weird to me, but...
I think so. I totally get that, but then I follow Grant Cardone, and he wears. Do you know who that is?
No.
Okay, so he does.
Sorry.
It's
You're
fine.
watching.
No, you don't have to. He's really in the real estate space, but he's a pretty big name in that in sales, and he always wears his like 10X outfit. So he has a conference that's called 10X, which means like whatever you're doing, 10X it. And he wears the hats all the time. He got his vehicles wrapped in it. It's absurd. And I was like, you know what? Like everywhere he goes, he's like repping his brand. And so I'm spending money on ads and I'm making content, all these other things. I could literally run into someone. They could see my hat and start a conversation and be a client. Like it's unlikely, but it's possible.
Yep.
And I was like, you know what? I'm going to do that. So I spent $70 on a hat.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
Yes.
I was thinking of making a series of different shirts.
Do it.
So this is such a side note, but I was inspired by this other designer. Her name is Trish Witkowski, and I am so sorry if I said your last name wrong. But she used to have videos, and I don't know if she still does, but she used to have 50-second fold of the week. She owns the Fold Factory. And
I've never heard of that.
okay, it's fantastic. So she like shows different types of like how things are folded, and she like breaks
like origami
it down.
kind of things?
Like brochures and
okay.
like all kinds of stuff. So she like breaks it down. But every video she has a shirt with a different saying on it. And they're funny sayings, and it's all about folds. And I was like, oh, I should do like, oh crop, or like, instead of oh crop. And so
Watch your language.
I was like
I'm
trying to
totally
come up
kidding.
with like, funny sayings, but I came up with Hello Happiness Design.
Right.
So not creative.
Well, but that's repping your brand.
Yeah.
But I agree, because I think I have this beautiful world that I'm imagining in my future where I have like a swag shop. And so I love that idea, because you can just create all these cool things. In fact, I actually found out someone who was doing that the other day. So Ross Simons is a guy that I found out about on Adweek. He does like a lot of content making and distribution stuff. And so his company is called like Foundation Marketing. And they do have a swag shop. And it's like, because they have like a couple of like illustrations, like graphical illustrations that they made. And so they've incorporated it on different like hats and stuff like that. So super cool. So it's been done. It's possible.
Yeah.
And they must make some money on it. So I say do it.
All
That sounds like so much fun.
All right, maybe next year. It'll be like my goal for 2023 is,
Right.
Get some swag.
And you're the graphic designer, so
I know.
you're doing the hard part.
I know, but you know what? It's like the shoemaker's kids never have shoes.
Oh, right.
It's one of those kinds of things.
That makes sense.
Right? So,
Cool. Well, let's double back to the experience part. And so Hello Happiness is no accident that you came across those words, because you want people to have a certain kind of experience in working with you, which is happiness, I'm assuming.
yes. Yeah.
So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so there's a lot of meaning to this name. It did stem from me leaving a prior job, not my last job. The company was started, as I said, in 2015, and I was working for another company. I'm not going to say the name because it's a terrible story, but I had my entire heart in this company, and it was a startup, and I was in very early on in the game, and it was a wonderful company when I first started, and it just grew, and it grew, and it grew, and it turned into something that it wasn't when it first started, like most startups. And an opportunity arose, and I jumped on it, and I created this awesome job description, and I proposed it to the CEO and the marketing director, and they ended up giving it to someone very green. without any experience, and I was extremely hurt by it. And I mean, when I say I put my whole heart into it, like I worked all nights. It was like I was a junior graphic designer and I was trying to prove myself.
Yeah.
Which I shouldn't have done, but I just was like, you know what, it's not worth it. All of this that I'm giving to this company, it's not worth it. And I decided to leave. So I walked out. I walked out without a job to go to, which is crazy when you have 2 young kids, right?
Yeah.
And you would think I'd be driving home crying because normal people would be upset because now they don't have a job, and you probably regret, like, oh my God, what did I just do?
Right.
Nope, not me. I was like, oh, this weight has been lifted off my shoulders. I was so happy. I turned the windows down. I turned Dave Matthews up, and I screamed on the top of my lungs, hello, happiness.
Oh, really?
And then it like dawned on me. I'm like, oh my God, I love that. Hello, happiness. It's got like a nice ring to it.
Dang.
And so I was thinking, like, if I start my own thing, that's what I'm going to call it. And a week later, I started my own thing, and that's what I called it.
Yeah.
I added design because Hello Happiness was already taken. So whoever, if you are listening to this and you have that, thanks. So I had to add hellohappinessdesign.com.
Totally different.
Totally different. But the other meaning behind it is that what I bring to my clients is not just design, right? I'm creating these experiences that people have, and the experiences I want them to have is happiness.
Yeah.
So when I have a client that comes to me, and I have clients of all different sizes. You know, I have big clients like Hidden Valley Ranch, and then I have a client whose mother-in-law just retired and she's starting her own little bakery and she needs a logo. And she comes to me and she says, you know, I want to create a logo for my mother-in-law for her Christmas gift. And she's starting her own company. I want to give her like a whole starter package for her to get going. And, you know, we work on a few iterations. I create the logo, the business cards, a stamp so she can like stamp her little packages.
Oh, that's cool.
And a sticker. And the look when I hand her the box and she opens it up, and it's just pure joy.
Yeah.
And that's, and you know, people eating the bakery goods, like, that's pure joy as well.
Yes, it is.
And so we all, you know, I love a little biscotti. And so that's bringing happiness, right? And good design should bring happiness. You know, some design doesn't bring happiness. It's really crappy design.
Aw.
But, you know, it's all about creating experiences that are memorable.
So I love the fact that you create experiences, and obviously they can be very powerful, because if they weren't powerful, companies wouldn't spend the amount of money that they spend on, you know, brick and mortar stores and all of the design that goes into websites and experiences and all that jazz. So obviously it's hugely important. So I would love to hear, like, heading back to Hidden Valley Ranch, so you talked about how you did some like promo work for like the sales setups for the salesmen in the stores. So walk me through a little bit of like what that creative journey was like for you and working with them, because that's super fascinating for me, because it's a big brand. So I'm sure they have high expectations and they have experience working with people. And so obviously you walked into it with a lot of experience too, but you're also an individual. So it's like, how did you manage all that? What was the process?
It's actually funny, and it's not anything like you would expect.
Okay.
So this project that we were talking about just now, the very first project, happened over winter break.
Okay.
And it was due to the printer before New Year's.
Wow.
I had to get it done in 2 weeks. So it was for a new product with 3 different flavors, and it was basically like mock-up packaging. So they only needed 5 pieces to be printed, put together, and shipped to the Walmart salespeople, wherever, I can't remember where it was. And so it was, one, understanding the brand, because I've never designed for Hidden Valley Ranch before. The only thing I knew about it was I like to dip carrots in it.
True.
And pizza. And I'm not really into wings. I have to really, really be into wings to want to eat them. And occasionally I get the itch. But they're all about pizza and ranch and wings and ranch.
Sure.
Back to the topic.
That's how you work through the crust.
Yeah. So it was nothing like anything you would expect. I worked directly with basically 2 people, and they gave me the 3 flavors, and they said, so basically we just need packaging that like helps tell the story of what this is. I think I could tell it now because it's already launched. It's called Ranch Night.
Okay.
And it's all about, coming together with your family and having ranch night, kind of like you would have like Taco Tuesday, and picking one night of the week and calling that ranch night. So like you would make some kind of meal that involves ranch.
Sure.
And so these were, like recipes and seasonings that would go along with that story. And there were 3 different seasoning packages that go with it. And it's like, okay, now go make something.
Right.
And that's like what I got. So, I took them and put them together, and what I created, they loved. And I literally gave them one concept.
Right.
And I was like, okay, this is great. Let's go. I wrote the copy on it. They loved the copy.
Dang.
I did the design. It was all, vector-based design.
Yeah.
The photography, they supplied the photography, obviously. And I mean, there really wasn't, I'm afraid to talk too much about it because they're a big company and I don't want them to like go after your podcast. But
we're saying good things about them, so I don't know.
I know. I really like working with them. Every project I worked on with them so far has been fantastic.
Yeah.
I'm not wearing it right now, but most of my wardrobe says ranch on it. For the holidays, they updated their ranch shop online. So if you go to ranch.com, there's a ranch shop. You can buy merchandise that I designed. So there's sweatshirts and T-shirts and water bottles and stickers and all kinds of things.
Did you have a blanket too?
Yes, there's a pizza blanket.
Pizza blanket.
One side is pepperoni pizza, and the other side is like a pizza saying, and it's like the texture of ranch. Like,
yeah,
it's kind of like, I don't know. Anywho, so
that's fun.
And it's a really comfy blanket. I love that blanket. So you can go shop there. But I don't know, working with a big brand and being like one little tiny person it's so cool, right?
Yeah.
I did their social media for 2 months between November and December. So working on all of their holiday stuff was neat.
How did you build that connection? Because that's like no joke.
It's a secret.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. You don't have to tell us.
I'll just say networking.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, no, that's super cool. That's sometimes I feel like it's better to work for those bigger brands because of the fact that like they have so many like positions held down that like you don't actually have to do like everything. They're kind of hiring you for something a little more specific, which is kind of nice.
Well, they also have an internal agency.
Right.
So, with a big brand and having that big brand, Clorox owns Hidden Valley Ranch.
Right.
They also own like Kingsford Charcoal and, a range of products, Glad bags and all of those things. And they have an internal agency that works on everything. And, that agency can get boggled down with a lot of work, and
sure.
Sometimes it's easier to just go somewhere else to get something really quickly.
Yeah.
And I'm that person. I don't have the big overhead. I don't have an office or a lot of people, but I can give them the same quality of work that they would have if they were to go to anyone in that agency to design it. So,
well, and it's fresh perspective. Like you're not in their brand every single day, so like. When you come in, you're going to bring something unique and fresh to it because you have a completely different, you're working with all kinds of different brands. They're just working with just theirs, which means they understand it deeply, but at the same time, they're not inspired by all these like random things all the time. I feel like it's just a feeling, but no, that's really cool. So then the other thing that I saw that you were doing really cool, which talk about experience is, and you're in the middle of the project, so maybe you can't talk about it, but barbershop, right?
Yeah, no, that one just finished.
Nice, okay.
That was an interesting one. So, I work on big projects for big clients, and I work on very small ones. And this one, I was approached actually by a company out here in Tempe called White Wolf Branding, or White Wolf Branding Solutions. They're a printer out here in the Valley. They do like grand format, you need your car wrapped or windows wrapped or whatever. They do all that printing and install, among other things. They do other things too. And they needed a designer. And so they reached out to me, and he's like, I have some clients that I'd like to introduce you to. And So they introduced me to this guy named Josh who owns a barber shop. He just opened up and he had no graphics on his windows. They were like the drabbiest windows ever.
Right.
And it's in an old shopping center out in Tempe. And it's just, he has like a banner as his sign. It's like a temporary sign.
Sure.
But once you go under the banner, like you go over under it, you don't know which door to go in. It's like, wait, which one is his?
They all look the same.
They all look the same. And so, sometimes when I go into client meetings, it doesn't pan out, It's like you don't have confidence like, oh, this client is so not going to no, they're not going to, nothing's going to come of this. And I kind of had that feeling going in because it's not a typical client that I would have. Mm-hmm. But I approached it like I would any other client, and I wrote the proposal. I gave him the scope of work. I gave him the pricing like I would any other client. And he was like, yep, let's do it.
Nice.
And I was like, okay. He already had a logo that his client made, or his client. Well, yeah, his client. Someone, he cuts his hair, and so it wasn't digitized. It was like marker drawing. And so that was part of the scope. And so I had to turn it into a vector. And then we created his windows. And originally he's like, I just want pictures of people's hair on the windows, which is very like 1990s where you see like hair on windows, like posters and stuff. Yeah. And I was like, I think you can probably go a little bit more modern and bold and get people like as they're driving by or walking by to like, see what you have and just look cool from the outside, right?
Totally.
Kind of has like this street look kind of logo.
Okay.
And so I just took elements of his logo that I didn't design it, but I took elements of it and turned it into a pattern on the bottom. And when I was at the install yesterday, he just kept coming out. He's like, I love it. And I'm like, do you like the placement of this? Do you want it to go a little higher? He's like, I love it. And I'm like, okay. Right. And in the end, we had him come out after it was all done. And he's just like, man, this is great. And I'm like, hello, happiness. I'm like, I was bringing the happiness. I'm like, right? You could tell, like, you could just see the joy on his face, seeing, like, he's like, now people are going to know where I am. Like, it was just, I love that feeling. Like, that's what gets me up in the morning. That's what makes my day. And that's why I've been doing this for so long.
Right. Yeah, I don't blame you. That's fantastic. And there's just something really cool about, like, the small business space because it's literally like someone's dream and they're trying so hard and they want it to be a thing. And obviously they want to do what they love, but they've got to like pay the bills too and all these other things and so it's really cool when they're able to like make that happen. And you get to be a part of it where it's like, okay, like this person is going to move their dream forward because of the work that you did for them. So that's always super exciting to be a part of. Very rewarding, I think.
And I'm a small business too, so it's like we're almost like equals, right? Yeah. I scratch your back, you scratch my back, kind of.
I mean, they're helping your dream to come true as well. You're just Yeah, that's cool. So, I think brand is super interesting, and obviously, like you and I talked about how like a brand is more than just a logo, and I know that's a gripe of many a graphic designer. So let's talk about that. Like when you think of brand, what do you think of?
It's a feeling.
Okay.
It's definitely a feeling. So let's talk about that, right? When you think of Coca-Cola, what's the first thing that comes to your mind?
Those freaking fuzzy polar bears.
Right.
Yeah.
Right? Or you think of like those commercials during the Super Bowl. Like you think of like what are those top commercials during the Super Bowl that are memorable, right? Or you think of like the color red. Or you think about like the coldness of the can after you take it out of the fridge.
The water droplets on the outside.
Yeah, you pop that little lid and it makes that sound and you drink it and you're like, like that's the embodiment of that brand, right? And then you have the logo, which is super iconic and it's evolved over the years, but it still always looks exactly the same. And if you were to show it to someone who is not a designer, they would never know that it's evolved, right? They would never know that, like, over time it's gotten a little bit more modernized. So it's not about the logo. It's about the lifestyle, right? Yeah. It's like Starbucks, right? You don't go into Starbucks because you like the coffee. You go
That's
because
for sure.
you want to go sit in there and work on your computer because it's a free working space, or you're walking around New York City and it's free restrooms like every 2 corners, or you just like holding the cup because it's got the belly band on it, and it just feeling of that paper cup in your hand while you're walking, and it's keeping your hand warm. That's why you go to Starbucks. So the brand is the experience. It's not, I mean, yes, it is visual, right?
Sure.
I mean, when I go to Whole Foods and I walk down the aisles, and I will buy packaging, I will buy a product just because of the packaging.
That's how I pick my wine.
Yeah. Oh, I do that at Costco. Just did that yesterday.
I'm like, oh, that looks tasty.
Yeah.
Somehow.
Yeah. I used to do that with pasta too. I had this like thing for pasta packaging for like the longest time. And when I was in undergrad, I did a project on pasta. And I made cool packaging for it. I was like, one day I'm going to make pasta packaging. No one has hired me for that yet. So.
Dang it.
But yeah, it's the experience. It's the feeling that you get from a brand. That is what branding is.
Right. So then, okay, so it's kind of like intangible, right? And then so then you've got to create something physical, right? Even if it's digital, it's still not a concept anymore. It's something you can look at, print, put on a web page, put on a sticker. So what kind of things do you think through, so I think, so just to double back, we've established the brand is a feeling, it's an experience, it's how customers really experience your brand. And I've always talked about how, like, you should really imagine your brand as like a human being, like a person, like, and a person has like a way they move and the way they sound, and they have music that they love, and they have like music that I already said that, but whatever. Like a certain way that they dress, like all those other things. Like if you can make your brand that tangible, then, because it's like, oh, I've got that crazy friend. Like that could be your brand. Your brand could be like the crazy friend, like where it's like, wow, and it's bold and crazy and wild, and you never know what to expect. So I feel like that, I don't know, that's how I think about branding. So that's cool that you feel similarly. So then fast forward now. So then we've covered that. So then how do you create something tangible from that? Like, what kind of process do you go through? Do you just like sit on it and like meditate and it just kind of comes to you? And I'm not being sarcastic, like I'm being real. Or do you have like a series of questions that you ask yourself for a client to be able to work through that? Like, how do you start getting there?
Yeah. So when I first meet with the client, we talk about, what is the project, and we talk about the brand, like if the brand was a person, and I'm so glad you said that. Yeah. Who would they be? What would they be? What kinds of things would they like? What are their favorite colors? It's easier to talk about the brand as a person than as a thing. Because when you talk about it as a thing, you start to like second guess yourself. Like I know who Hello Happiness is. Yeah. I know that Hello Happiness loves the color yellow. And I know that Hello Happiness loves the color black because they go together. But it's not about that, right? I already talked about what Hello Happiness brand is about. It's about creating experiences. And if Hello Happiness was a person, they would be like the happiest person on earth. They would be like living at Disney all the time because that is who they are. They're
universal.
Sorry.
Just because of Harry Potter. But yes.
I do
Disney
like
is
the
wonderful.
Harry Potter part.
Disney is wonderful.
So I talk to my clients about like their branding as being a person. Yeah. And then after that, I on my own, I go and I just like I kind of like have like a word cloud of like all the things that they said. I take a lot of notes when I have a stack of notebooks that I've kept over the years. Like since I left college, I've kept every single notebook that I've ever had from every single job. So I have like this stack.
Holy crap.
And they're all the same size. Like I'm very particular about like my notebooks, and they have to have a spiral because I like to keep them folded open. Oh, right, totally. So I never remember what the cover of my notebooks look like until I'm all done and I close it back up again. But I like just write stuff down, and I go on Pinterest a lot, and if it's like a logo for an owl, I'm like owl logo or bakery logos, or I just want to see like what other people have done because I don't want to do what other people did. Right. And sometimes like people say like, oh, that stunts your creativity because, now it's like your mind isn't fresh anymore. But I think it helps me and it inspires me. The other thing I do is I take baths. I think it was Harry Truman or Winston Churchill. They sat in baths like for hours to like think about stuff. And
it was Winston Churchill.
Winston Churchill, yeah. So I do that.
Yeah.
And it's funny because my younger daughter, she loves baths too. Like,
okay.
We fight over the bathtub a lot. But I take about 3 baths a week, and I just use that for my thinking.
Okay.
And I don't charge my clients for bath time because how could you?
But it's very valuable. So.
It is. But I will just sit there and like think.
Yeah.
And sometimes like I have ideas that just like pop in my head,
yeah.
and like I'm good to go. And that's most of the time. And other times I have no ideas.
Yeah.
And I stress and I don't sleep and I'm like, oh my God, I can't do this. And I go and talk to my husband. I'm like, I don't think I could do this. I don't know what I'm going to do. And he's like, you'll be fine. You always do it. Just go do your thing. And I'm like,
just relax.
Yeah, you got this. And, you know, I do a little bit of sketching. I'm not a very big sketcher.
Okay.
I stopped doing that a long time ago. But sometimes, like, it just helps to, like, quickly, like, my sketches don't look like anything, so I don't show it to anyone. But, like, sometimes it just helps to, like, quickly, like, you know, doodle something so I can see if it works.
Yeah.
And then I just, like, start playing with shapes in the computer and typography and eventually it turns into something. I don't know. It's
right.
like the magic kind of does it. And I always say like design kind of like my designs, like they build themselves. Like I don't know how it happens, but they just kind of fall into place.
Yeah. It's like your brain is like a cauldron. You're just like kind of like just doing the stirring.
Yeah.
And eventually something comes up and you're like, I like that.
Well, you look and you're like, I made that. You're like, how did I do that?
Right.
And it's just weird, right? Like, you're
yeah.
in the process. Like, you're doing the process. You're taking the notes. You're doing the sketching. You're doing the thinking. You're putting it in the computer and you know, coming up with all different iterations. And finally you get to the final product and you're looking at it and you're like, yeah. And you forget all the things that led up to that, right?
Yeah.
It's almost like having a baby. It's like, that's why people just keep having more babies. You forget all the things in between.
You're going to get the 9 months of misery.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. And I 100% agree with you about doing the research part. I think so much of it has to do with like intention, right? So like, I think there's a big difference between going on Pinterest and looking for designs as like a framework for something, right? Because like when you think about it, like a logo or some sort of like graphic thing is communicating something about the business. Mm-hmm. So like if you look up like best graphic design logos of 2022, like that's not really the point. Mm-hmm. Like the point isn't to have the coolest logos of 2022. It's like what element from this logo and what element from this logo and what element from this logo can I combine to communicate the brand?
Yes.
And I think that's totally different intention. So yeah, I would agree that like if you're going on there to just find like design practicality, that's a bad idea. But if you're looking for like inspiration, like I've never been more inspired than the time, well, that's not true. That's a bold statement. I would say the time that I was telling you about that I went to the 3 different stores and like I just walked away with just like so much inspiration. Top 3, I would say. Top 3 in most inspiring moments. And it helped me actually identify my brand because I got to like understand branding better because of that inspiration. So like, I 100% support and agree that if you go online and you research, like I don't actually think it makes you less creative. I think it gives, and it's like you talked about, like you don't even realize sometimes like what's happening in your brain to bring it all together. And so it's like you give them all these inputs and then your brain like somehow puts it together. And I don't understand it, but it's amazing.
Yeah. And Behance is another one too. I always like to go on Behance.
Because you have an account on there? Or?
Yeah, I do. I have a Behance portfolio on there.
Nice.
And so, yeah, I love seeing what other designers made. And yeah, it's seeing what people made and then taking bits and pieces of it. And, you know, I feel like everything has been done. It's just like, how do you make it better? Or how do you make it your own? You know, my kids, they always like say, you know, oh, what if, you know, this happened? I'm like, well, if you thought about it, someone already did it. But you can always do it and make it better. Yeah. So.
Yeah, that's why they say steal like an artist, not copy like an artist, right? Because you got to steal the good ideas. Mm-hmm. I mean, at the end of the day, if you think about it, if you went to school for graphic design, like you're just learning from other people how they did it, and isn't that any different than going online and being inspired by someone's logo on Pinterest?
Yeah.
It's the same thing.
Yeah.
Like, you're learning off of the shoulders of someone else. But anyway, so what do you think has been, I'm kind of curious, like, what are like some graphic design, like you mentioned Coke. What are some other brands that you look at and you're like, wow, like their look matches up with their experience so well? I know this is totally random, but I'm just throwing it out there.
Yeah, so Starbucks is one. Let me think.
How so?
Well, I mentioned, when you go into you don't go to Starbucks for the coffee.
Sure.
You go to like use the space, use the bathroom, hold the cup. And I go to Starbucks a lot. My husband actually asked me, how do you track your Starbucks? You don't even know how much you've spent on Starbucks this past year? I'm like, there's an app for that, honey.
Right.
I'm a gold member. I've got stars and collect rewards, free things once in a while.
If you're going to go all the time, you might as well make it worth your while.
Yes. I've learned how to work the system too. That's a whole nother podcast.
The refills while you're there.
Well, that, and also like, we'll go.
Yeah,
there.
Please give me the details afterwards. I must know.
Yeah, another brand. Let's see, Vans. I have them on right now. Vans is another one, right? So I always feel like, they're like the comeback kid, because when I was a kid, everyone, they had Vans in like the 90s, and I kind of, they went away a little bit. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't until like maybe the last 5 years where they really like started to make a comeback, and like even my kids have them, and I love them. I've always loved them. But the whole brand, like you walk into the store and it's like you're transported, and it's like a skate park,
Oh, yeah.
It's like skatery everywhere. I am so not a skater. I cannot ride a skateboard for my life, but I like that whole feeling when you go in there. And so when you wear the sneakers, you kind of feel like I kind of feel young wearing the sneakers. I look young, but I'm really not that young.
You do. You definitely do not look old.
I'm old.
Well, don't tell anyone. They won't believe you anyways.
I know. But I don't know. I do like Vans just because of like the whole lifestyle of that brand.
Yeah.
Let's see. What else? I don't know. I have to think a little bit more.
Right. I feel like, I'm just going to throw this out there. I feel like almost any good brand is a lifestyle brand. Mm-hmm. On some level, it just kind of depends on like how they embrace it.
Well, here's a good example, and this is so weird that it didn't just pop in my head. Hidden Valley Ranch is not all about ranch. Mm-hmm. It's a lifestyle brand, and there's a cult following to it.
Yeah.
That's why they sell merch, because people literally like live and breathe ranch. They put ranch on everything, just like people put ketchup on everything.
That was my sister.
Like when I was a kid,
younger.
I put ketchup on everything. I put on popcorn and eggs and chips and.
Okay.
I don't do it anymore.
Ketchup on popcorn?
Yes, I don't do it anymore. I stopped that a long time ago, but I don't even really like ketchup anymore. But people they love ranch, and when I did a photo shoot for them for their holiday kits that I designed, we were shooting lifestyle pictures, and it's all about the lifestyle of ranch. It's like bringing it on a picnic and the memories of it at a dinner party, and like they have like all the crudités and the you dip them in the ranch.
I'm not cool enough to know what a crudité is.
Like raw vegetables, like cucumbers and carrots and stuff. It's like a fancy word.
Yes, it is. Too fancy for me.
You just learned something.
Yeah.
And like when you're cooking and you put ranch and different, like the seasoning ranch, you put it on chicken. And you sit around the table and with your family and creating memorable experiences. Totally. Right? So it's all about the lifestyle.
Yeah.
Ranch. So that's another one.
I like that a lot. I feel like another one that's really, I think I probably mentioned it once or twice on the podcast, but like one that I think has really just fully embraced having a lifestyle is Red Bull.
Oh, yes.
Because they've got, like, they sponsor and run events for extreme sports and, like, just sports in general. They've got, like, their publications. They have, like, a whole media company. Like, it's insane. Like, they do so much more than just sell cans of energy. Like, it's a whole thing, and I think it's brilliant, and I love how they do that, and they've really embraced it. Like, this is who we are. And because, I don't even know if I even heard of them like 12 years ago.
Well, I bet you in like 2 seconds you can say their tagline.
Red Bull gives you wings.
See?
Which is funny because if like, you think about it, like their commercials are nothing like the rest of their branding, actually, if you think about it. Because they've got like the kind of like cheesy graphic hand-drawn stuff.
It gives you wings.
Yeah, but nothing else that they make looks like that. It's kind of interesting. I wonder if it just works so well that they're like, we are not going to change this.
Yeah, or GoDaddy. Do you remember the GoDaddy commercials with the sexy women?
I have.
That's really...
They've moved away from that a little bit.
They have, but those were, remember, like during the Super Bowl, like those were very memorable. And it's all about like, you know, the sex sells. Yeah. And they're selling web space.
Yes, exactly. It's very strange. But apparently people don't like to be exploited anymore, so they kind of moved away from that.
No.
So
I still do believe that sex sells. People like pretty people.
Yeah, have you ever heard hip-hop music?
Yes.
So
I know. There's some questionable music videos that pop up on my TV.
There sure are. So, yeah, so I think I love the idea of having that lifestyle and embracing that. And I think that once again leads to this idea that like the brands that I think communicate and do the best are the ones that focus on the outcomes. And so like having a memorable meal together with your family that's delicious and a powerful time, that's an outcome. Believe it or not, that's an outcome of ranch, apparently. But if you think about it, that's so much different than like them if they were to talk about like their flavor profile.
Yes.
And so many businesses do that very same thing. It's like, okay, well, like we do, I'm like totally at a loss for words of like if it was like a home building company, like, oh, like we use the appropriate amount of 2x4s on your structure, like nobody gives a crap. And it's like at the end of the day, they want to see a picture of a happy family in a brand new home and they feel like $1 million because they're like in this beautiful new house, right? That's outcome focused.
It's the Simon Sinek why, you know, it's what is your why? You know, why are you doing the things that you do? Why do you have the business that you're starting? Right. You know, if you're starting a business just to start a business, then you might as well not start your business. But if you're starting a business to solve a problem or to fill a need or a void, well, then that's your why. Right. And then your brand is based off of that. It's to build on that.
Well, I mean, but I think it's even another level further. Like ranch is made to make vegetables more tasty, but that's still not the outcome. The outcome is like that gathering together, which I think is just so fascinating. And I love that they've embraced that. And I think that's just like a great lesson for every business of like, try to like sit and think for a minute of like, how does this affect people's lives? And like tell that story too. Because I think that's powerful.
Yeah.
Okay. So as the last question that I'll ask you, pretty open-ended, but I'll let you just kind of go with it, which is, what do you think, besides the ones we already mentioned, is some like misconceptions about graphic design that you would like to set straight on this podcast?
Okay. Misconceptions. So a lot of young designers who come in think that graphic design is a sexy job because they see it in the movies and there's a lot of work that happens behind the scenes and there's a lot of you have to learn to accept criticism and you have to have a very thick skin, and it's something that I've built up over the years, and honestly you couldn't say anything to me that would affect me these days. Like, you don't like it, okay, I'll just come up with something new.
Right. You've made it impersonal.
Yeah, you cannot be attached to what you do. And a lot of people that come into this business, they think they're coming in to create something that's going to be like this masterpiece that they're going to own and they're going to love it, but really what you're doing is you're working for your client. Yeah. And you're trying to produce the vision that your client wants, and you can steer them in the direction that they're hiring you to do, and make it the best that you can do. But in the end, your client owns what you're creating, and I think that's probably like the most important thing, and that's something that I tell my students as well, is like accepting criticism is like number one, because if you can get past that, you can get past a lot of other things. See what else. Yeah. Another misconception is like, it's not easy. Like, you're not just creating pretty things. Like, people used to ask me, like, what do you do for a living? And I say, I make things pretty.
Yeah.
Like, that's not what you do.
Right.
Like, you are a visual problem solver. You're coming up with a strategy of, like, how is someone going to pick this off of a shelf versus this off of a shelf? Like, why is this design going to be more important than this design? Or I used to design for CoverGirl when I first started, and when you walk down the aisles of Walmart or Target or CVS and you see, like, the little strips, like the bull noses that have, like, all the, you know, fun markety information.
Like in the makeup aisle? Or?
In the makeup aisle, yeah. You know, it's like kind of, you know, you could buy Maybelline or you could buy CoverGirl.
Yeah.
Like, some people go in, like, I just need a black eyeliner. It's like, how do you get them to buy your black eyeliner?
Right.
And so it's...
Especially when there's, like, no discernible difference in the product.
Exactly. So, you know, it's being a problem solver. You're not just making pretty pictures. It's not art school.
Right.
Art school is great. It teaches you the foundation of what you need for your job, but most of what you learn is on the job.
Right.
And I didn't learn a lot of design strategy while I was in school, and I'm still learning design strategy as I go.
Right. Yeah, I think that's important. I mean, like, creating is such an emotional experience because, like, it's something that you made, that you created, and, like, to have someone, like, tear it apart is kind of scary and sad. Mm-hmm. And you definitely have to develop some thick skin to work through that because, yeah, it's a very personal connection. And I think it's why a lot of artists in general, it's why someone will create, like, a beautiful piece of art and they're like, I don't know if I can sell it. And it's, like, because it's, like, connected to them.
Mm-hmm. Sometimes, like, you know, I'll create something for a client and I'll give them a few different options, and, you know, maybe they don't like any of the options. I actually had this happen to me back in the fall. And that's literally never happened to me, where I've given a client 7, 8 options and they didn't like a single option that I gave them. And I think they were all fantastic options. And you get to a point where you're like, I don't know what you want. Like,
yeah.
I don't know what you're looking for.
It means that they don't know what they want.
They don't know what they're looking for. And I can tell you that the product is not very sexy. So it's like, it's not unique. So you just try to create something that makes it look good.
Yeah.
And that's what I did. So I prepared a few more, you know, we conversed and I agreed to give 3 more concepts. And, you know, if those concepts didn't work out, then we're done. We're splitting. You're on your own. Figure out what it is. And they ended up picking one of the concepts. It wasn't my favorite concept. And in my portfolio, I show the other concepts that I like.
Well, because you still made them, so
I still made them. I think they're great concepts.
Yeah.
I paid for the stock photography for them because I thought they were fantastic, and why shouldn't the world see them? Mm-hmm. So, you know.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, like, there's so many beautiful things that I see on Pinterest that are just mock-ups.
Yeah.
I'm like, you didn't make that for a client. And I think that's a great idea because at the end of the day, like, I know from, like, a photography and video side, they always talk about having passion projects, which is a project that you're making for your artistic expression that says something that you want to say as a creator. And you have your stuff that you've done for a client that's your validity that says, like, I can deliver for a client and you have nothing to worry about. And then it's that other work that says, like, I can make something unique for you. And this is how I'm proving that. And this is what my communication to the world about what I want to say is. And I think that's powerful. So I love that you're sharing that because that's like sharing a part of who you are. And even if it's not client work, it talks to your creativity.
Thank you.
So I think that's fun.
Yeah. And then, you know, sometimes like I will complete a project and then give the final files to the client. And I never know what happens after that. I never get to see it printed. I don't know what happened. I don't get any feedback, you know, like you don't know how it went at the event or anything. And so, you know, there's a part of you where it kind of feels like your baby while you're working on it. And then you kind of just like send it off into outer space.
Right.
Never to be seen again.
Hope it grew up.
Yes.
That's fair. Well, cool. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. Where can people find you?
Yeah, so you can find me on my website at www.hellohappinessdesign.com or find me on Behance by Lauren Kreitz, LaurenCrites.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Appreciate your insight. It's been really helpful and good for me to learn. And I know that I think your perspective on branding and how that it plays together and the whole experience that a brand has is super valuable to anyone building a brand. So thank you.
I appreciate you. Thank you.
I wanna cause no problems. I just wanna live my life, but I keep on hearing about nonsense. Me and my dons ain't mobsters, but you know when you see imposters, we know how to read them faces, same way you know how to read them comments. If you wanna talk, let's talk, but around here, make sure you walk and your talk is constant.